I was busy reviewing a contract when my assistant tried to stop someone from barging into my office. The door swung open, and there stood Alan, my cousin, the troublemaker of the family. He walked in like he owned the place, grinning like we were best friends. I hadn't seen him in years, which had honestly been a good thing. Before I could even react, he dropped a folder on my desk and said, "Since you're family, you should give me half your salary." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but Alan was dead serious. He pushed a paper toward me. It was a fake contract claiming I had to give him 50% of my monthly income because we were family. Alan looked confident and said, "I talked to a lawyer, and this is legally binding." I was so shocked I couldn't speak. Alan had always been a freeloader, living off other people and never paying back borrowed money, but this was a whole new level of crazy. "You can't be serious," I said. He smirked and said, "You make a lot of money, so you can afford it." I was about to tell him to leave when my boss, Mr. Reynolds, walked in. "I think you should leave now," Mr. Reynolds said calmly. Alan, trying to act tough, said, "This is a private family matter." Mr. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "Family or not, you have no right to be here and definitely no right to threaten my employee." Alan looked nervous but kept trying. "This is a civil agreement. I don't think you understand." "No, you don't understand," Mr. Reynolds replied. "You're trespassing, trying to extort money, and making a fool of yourself." Alan's jaw clenched. Desperate to stay in control, he said, "If he doesn't pay, I'll take legal action." Mr. Reynolds laughed. "Legal action? For being related to you?" I almost burst out laughing. Alan didn't think it was funny. He glared at me and said, "You're really going to let him talk to me like that?" "Yes," I said firmly, "I absolutely am." Alan's face turned red. He looked between me and Mr. Reynolds, realizing his plan was falling apart. Desperate, he grabbed the contract, stomped over to Mr. Reynolds's desk, and held it out like it was real. "As his employer, you should tell him to honor family commitments," Alan said smugly. Mr. Reynolds slowly stood up, giving Alan a glare so intense he nearly shrank away. "Get out," Mr. Reynolds said. Alan hesitated for a second before grabbing his fake contract and storming out. I shook my head, still in disbelief. Mr. Reynolds looked at me and said, "You need to handle that." He was right. Knowing Alan, he wasn't done with his ridiculous scheme, and that evening, my phone buzzed, proving me right. "Alan, you embarrassed me today. Big mistake. I'll give you one chance to fix this. Send me $5,000 by Friday, and we'll call it even." I stared at my phone in shock. Before I could even respond, he sent another text. "Alan, if you don't, I'll be forced to take legal action." "Legal action? For what?" I muttered, taking a deep breath. I blocked his number and decided to forget about it, but Alan wasn't giving up that easily. The fake lawsuit. 2 weeks later, I was served with real legal papers. At first, I thought it was a prank, but it was real. Alan had filed a lawsuit, claiming I made a verbal agreement to support him financially and broke that promise. I laughed out loud reading it. How did he even afford to file a lawsuit? Then I remembered, his mom, my aunt, always bailed him out. She probably paid for this, thinking I'd just give him the money to end the drama. They didn't know who they were dealing with. I called my lawyer, Scott. He read the lawsuit and sighed. "This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen." Dumb or not, I had to fight it. The public spectacle. Filing a lawsuit wasn't enough for Alan. He went public. He started posting on Facebook, saying I was a selfish corporate sellout who wouldn't help his own family. He made videos, crying and complaining that I had promised to help him once I became successful. People believed him. Relatives and old friends called and texted me, angry and disappointed. "How could you do this to your cousin? Alan says you promised to help him. Are you really that selfish? You make so much money, just help him out." They had no idea who Alan really was. They didn't know about all the mooching, lies, and scams over the years. Then, Alan took things even further. He showed up at my office, with a camera. The office meltdown. I was working when my assistant called me. "Sir, he's back." I knew who she meant. I walked to the reception area, and there he was, Alan, holding his phone, recording me. "There he is," Alan shouted, "the cousin who abandoned his own blood." I sighed. "Alan, leave." He shoved the phone closer to my face. "Tell everyone why you refused to help me. Why are you making me suffer?" I stayed calm. "Security is coming. If you don't leave, they'll escort you out." He sneered. "Oh, look at this. Thinks he's so powerful." Alan turned the camera on himself, pretending to cry. "He used to say we were like brothers. Now, he won't even look me in the eye." Just then, Mr. Reynolds walked in. Alan pointed the camera at him. "Sir, how do you feel about hiring a heartless man who won't help his family?" Mr. Reynolds didn't even flinch. "Security." Alan was dragged out. kicking and screaming, but the best part? One of my coworkers recorded the whole thing, and the video went viral. The fallout: the video of Alan's meltdown spread fast. People finally saw who he really was: manipulative, entitled, and fake. His plan totally backfired. Mutual friends stopped talking to him, and family members who supported him went silent. His lawsuit was laughed out of court. And then, karma hit hard. His landlord saw the video and, fed up with Alan's excuses, served him an eviction notice. Alan was homeless. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but no. Alan's final, desperate move? He stole from our grandmother. The final blow: after getting evicted, Alan ran out of options, and desperate people do desperate things. One night, my grandmother called me crying. "He took my savings," she said. My stomach dropped. Alan had tricked her into giving him money she needed for medical bills. That was it. I called Scott. Start digging. And what we found? Alan had a history of fraud, fake loans, stolen credit cards. He even had warrants in another state. I handed everything over to the police. 2 weeks later, Alan was arrested. Alan going to prison. Alan going to prison should have been the end. It wasn't. A year later, I got a letter from Alan. I almost threw it away but decided to read it. It was a handwritten apology, or at least, it pretended to be. "Cousin, I've had time to think. I was wrong. I let greed take over. Families should support each other, not tear each other down. I want to make things right. When I get out, let's talk." I laughed. It was so fake. Alan only said what he needed to say to get what he wanted. I didn't respond. But a few months later, Alan got out early for good behavior, and went right back to causing trouble. The identity theft. Alan didn't waste time. Since no one in the family would help him anymore, he found a new way to scam. This time, his target was me. One day, I got a fraud alert from my bank. Someone tried to take out a huge loan in my name. My stomach sank. After a lot of phone calls and paperwork, I got the details. The application was under my name. The address listed? A cheap apartment across town. The person who verified the application? Someone named Elaniel Brooks. Alan, this idiot was trying to steal my identity. I was furious, but I didn't react, yet. I called Scott and said, "Let's make sure he never tries this again." Alan thought he was clever. He used a fake address and thought he could get away with it, but I had better resources than him. We started investigating and found out Alan was running all kinds of scams. He opened credit cards using different versions of my name, tried buying a car with fake checks, and even scammed people online with fake investment deals, and he used the same cheap apartment for all of it. I had all the evidence I needed, so I called a federal fraud investigator. Alan's last mistake. Alan was already in trouble for his last fraud case. When law enforcement started digging, they found everything: fake accounts, fraudulent purchases, stolen identities. Alan got arrested again. This time, there was no getting out early for good behavior. He was facing a long prison sentence, and because of the identity theft charges, he'd never be able to open a legitimate bank account again. The ultimate revenge. Alan spent his whole life leeching off people. Now, he had nothing. For a while, things were quiet. No one mentioned Alan, and I thought it was all over. But people like Alan don't change. He found a way to make things worse for himself, even from prison. The prison scam. One day, my lawyer Scott called. "You're not going to believe this." I sighed. "What now?" Scott laughed. "You ever heard of prison scams? Apparently, some inmates run scams from behind bars. They create fake charities, run fraud schemes, and even steal identities from within the system. And Alan? He got caught running one of those scams. He was pretending to be a charity organizer, tricking people outside into sending him money. He was also threatening other inmates, trying to blackmail prison staff, and pretending to offer legal help in exchange for money. He was a one-man crime machine, and the warden found out. This time, Alan was in real trouble. My final move. Scott and I had a choice: let the system handle him or make sure he could never hurt anyone again. I chose the second option. Scott put together all the evidence: every scam, fraud charge, and case of identity theft. I sent a detailed report to the prison administration, the district attorney, and the parole board. No early release, no shortcuts. Alan had sealed his own fate. The final blow? Because of his prison scams, they transferred him to a maximum security prison, far from any connections or chances to scam his way out. The end of Alan. A few months later, I got another letter from Alan. This time, he was begging. "Please, cousin, they're sending me to the worst prison. I won't survive. Just talk to the parole board. I'll do anything." I read it, then shredded it. Alan spent his whole life hurting and using people. Now, he was finally facing the consequences, and for the first time, I knew he wasn't coming back. Alan was moved to a maximum security prison hundreds of miles away. No more scams, no more drama. And me? I finally got what I wanted, a life without him in it. Some people can't be saved, they'll destroy themselves, and all you have to do is step back and let them.